Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. We are celebrating a major milestone for Battleship New Jersey. May 23rd of this year, 2020, marks her 77th birthday, the 77th anniversary of her being commissioned into the United States Navy. And we get a lot of questions about what the difference are between the different major construction milestones for ships like this. So let's take a minute and go through them, specifically from the context of Battleship New Jersey. So, Battleship New Jersey is one of a series of American battleships designed. Following the design of the South Dakota class fast battleships, the U.S. Navy in about December of 1938 started looking at new designs for a future larger class of battleships. They got an extra 10,000 tons to work with, so they started arguing over whether they wanted a ship that was 10,000 tons faster or 10,000 tons more heavily armed. So why 10,000 tons in this design? Well, Congress tells the U.S. Navy how big and expensive they can make a ship, and at this time, the U.S. Navy was building battleships to treaty standards. The first international arms limitation treaties were signed in the 20s and 30s, and at this time, the London Naval Treaty was superseding the Washington Naval Treaty, which allowed battleships to grow from 35,000 tons to 45,000 tons via the Escalator Treaty, Escalator Clause. So, they have their design parameters, and they start producing a series of designs. These designs then go through various bureaus, and these are just rough outlines at this point. They're called spring styles in the U.S. Navy, much like you would get in a magazine at the time to see what the new spring clothing styles are. What's the new spring styles for battleship design? Well, this year it's going to be fast battleships, long and thin. So, this series of designs goes up the chain of command. One of those designs is authorized for further study to be the battleship class that will be BB-61. Once these plans were largely fleshed out, they're not entirely complete, but everybody was fairly content with them, they are ordered. And for the first two Iowa-class battleships, Iowa and New Jersey, BB-61 and 62, the order date was July 1, 1939. So at that point, money has been appropriated by Congress to start building these ships, and the long lead item parts of the construction, things like gun barrels will take a really long time to manufacture. Things like the armor plate, which has to be stockpiled in huge quantities. Approximately 40% of the ship's weight can be armor. And things like the engineering plant, which the Navy cannot build. They have to go out to different companies to get these massive plants designed and built so that they can be built into the ship with the rest of the hull built around it. So at that point, long lead items like that are being done, but also these ships were significantly longer and heavier than any prior American battleship. So they also had to start doing work on the slipways where the ships were going to be built. In New Jersey's case, there was already a battleship being built in our slipway, Washington, so she had to be launched. The slipway had to be reinforced for more weight and longer, and then they had to start assembling the long lead items. The first major milestone in actual construction is the keel laying. It's September 16th, 1940 for New Jersey. At this point, there's a fully workable set of plans, although they will continue to be updated throughout the design process, and even while the ship's in service. And material has been collected. So at this point, you get a bunch of dignitaries together, and you're going to put the first two plates of the keel together and ceremonially rivet or weld those together, riveting with New Jersey welding in some other ships at that time and most modern ships. So at that point, construction has started above ground on dry land, and you just start building up your framing of the ship, and then eventually your shell plating and other internal subdivision and that sort of stuff. Eventually, your hull is more or less complete. Now, theoretically, you could build the entire ship on land and then put it in the water, but it has to be light enough that you can move it from land to water. So smaller ships are sometimes completed more or less before they're first put in the water. A ship like New Jersey, they built her up to the main deck. They built some of the superstructure, so you have a watertight hull and a little bit of the towers and things on top of that. No propellers yet, no rudders yet, no gun turrets yet. And then the ship is launched. In our case, we were launched on December 7th, 1942, the first anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. So New Jersey is one of the so-called Pearl Harbor Avengers. There were a number of ships launched on the various anniversaries of Pearl Harbor, including New Jersey. So at launch, you also have the christening of the ship. And christening is a tradition where the ship's sponsor, who is normally female but not always, breaks a bottle of, often it is champagne, but again, not always. For New Jersey, it was New Jersey white wine. For other ships, it's different types of, usually alcohol. Sometimes it's sparkling water or other things like that. It just depends. Sometimes there is a reason, a connection. For example, New Jersey white wine for us. Behind me, we have a scale replica of the christening bottle holder. So, you have your important dignitary. In our case, it is Miss Carolyn Edison. Her husband, Charles Edison, the son of inventor Thomas Edison of New Jersey, had been assistant and then acting secretary of the Navy, and had pushed through the design and development of the Iowa-class battleships and the selection of the name New Jersey for one of those ships. He later became governor of New Jersey, and because it can take years and years to build a capital ship like this one, remember there's something like 45,000 tons of metal that goes into one of these, he had time to get elected governor, and then his wife was able to christen the ship. Now, she was wearing a very nice mink stole. You don't want to just slam a champagne bottle against the side of the ship and then get sprayed with all of that carbonated, sticky liquid. So he created a silver wine bottle holder that had some holes in it that contained most of the bottle. She swings this against the side of the ship. Silver is pretty soft, so it bent. The wine bottle inside shattered, and the champagne only came out of the holes in the side. Well, this is a crystal engraving of what that looks like. So the original silver wine bottle holder still exists in the Edison family's collection, and we were able, they graciously allowed us to scan it in order to make this replica. Once the ship has been christened, she immediately slides down the ways into the water, and that's launching. Both of these events happened December 7th, 1942. Once the ship was launched, and you tend to launch ships stern first, tugs take a hold of the ship, and typically they pull them into dry dock right away. So in our case, at dry dock number 3, right here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. In dry dock, things like the rudders and propellers, which could be damaged in a stern first launch, are installed. Some other work is done on the exterior hull, and then the ship is put back in the water, and that way the slipway and the dry dock are available for other ships to be built, and the ship sits pierside. In our case, it was for about a year at that point, and the big shipyard cranes lift things like the gun turrets, the fire control range finders, the remaining pieces of superstructure into place. Once that is done, you have a mostly ready ship. A crew has already been assigned at this point, a prospective crew, and then that crew starts to take care of outfitting the ship, learning the ship systems, and you have to go through a series of trials. So you test all the equipment on board to make sure they're up to standards, you train the crew on the equipment, and test everything about it. So you've got the builder's trials, and then the Navy has certain tests that they put the ships through. And then, usually after all this is done, but not necessarily, the ship is placed into commission. Once the ship is in commission, in our case it was May 23rd, 1943, she is then an active naval vessel under the command of her commanding officer, in our case a captain. And the Navy gives orders, and that ship goes and does it. In some cases, those orders are to continue training or do more exercises, tests, and yard periods. After we were commissioned, we did a number of exercises off the East Coast. We went back in the yard to get some modifications and changes, and then we're deployed to an actual combat zone. And by February of 1944, New Jersey is operating in the Central Pacific with the rest of the fleet. Following a period of activation, a ship is then decommissioned. She's taken out of service. And in some cases, that's it for the ship. They're scrapped or sold. Some Navy ships go on to be used by private buyers. Some are sunk in tests or for other uses. Some are scrapped. But many, including New Jersey, are put into reserve in what's called the mothball fleet. So they are sealed up, so they're ready to be used again if ever needed. For most ships, they're never needed again, and while they're sitting in mothballs, spare parts are stripped off. So the Navy uses a lot of the same parts throughout its fleet. When something breaks, it's much cheaper to go take it from a mothballed ship than from an active ship or from buying a new one. So this happens for a period of time, and then if the ship is going to be recalled to service, she's brought back. If she isn't, she'll be stricken from the Naval Register. So that means that she's no longer being retained for any military value. At that point, she can be disposed of by whatever way the Navy wants, whether it's scrapping, sinking in a test, selling to another company, what have you. In our case, the Strom Thurmond Defense Act of 1999 mandated the ship become a museum in the territorial waters of New Jersey. And so that's where we are. Most ships do not attain this rare honor. There's less than probably 200 ships worldwide that are retained for such purposes. But New Jersey had a very lucky and charmed life, and that continues into her museum era. Thanks for watching today. Remember to wish New Jersey a happy birthday on May 23rd. Like, share, subscribe to get more content from us. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comment section down below and we'll get back to you. And remember, if you'd like to support the museum or our mission or our YouTube channel, check out the description down below for ways you can donate. It would make a nice birthday present to the ship.